Welcome to the podcast. It starts with you, with me, Vic O'Farrell. I ask my guests, by understanding their own behaviours and personality style, what impact on their lives, both personally and professionally, has there been? What is it like to live and work with someone of your style? I mean, this is not about labelling people, putting people in boxes, or an excuse for bad behaviour. It's about recognising, understanding and respecting that we're all different. And what impact can you have on others by looking in the mirror? Because it starts with you. How wonderful it is to be joined today by the looking fabulous, if you're watching this on YouTube, Michelle. Michelle, would you like to tell everybody who you are and what you do? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Vicky, and it's fab to be here. So thanks for inviting me. So I am Michelle Mills-Porter, and I'm known as the People Reader. I'm a behaviour expert, and I go into organisations and I help them to unleash their people power.
Amazing. Now, I'd always normally start by asking what it means to understand and know what your profile is personally and professionally. But I'm going to start with you first of all, Michelle, by asking you, how did you get into this whole behavioural profiling?
Well, I know that you have the inside track, Vicky, but
I do, but the listeners don't.
don't. So let me take you back. So I was a CEO, and it just so happened that one of my clients was a recruitment company that were really well up on behavior profiling. So because I was doing their new business generation for them, I got to see the insights in terms of what behavior profiling was about, and I'd started using it in my organization. But then I got caught in the middle of the Boxing Day tsunami whilst on a diving holiday. And that was a major pivotal moment for me because, you know, the tsunami aside, the tsunami was a horrendous thing. And yeah, there's keynotes about it and all sorts of things. It was horrendous, but there was also a beauty in what I went through. And what I realized is in the face of adversity, you get to see straight through to the core of humanity. And it bowled me over to see this almost like a factory reset button in human beings that caused them to show this benevolence and compassion that just came out of, I say came out of nowhere, but it was just illuminated. And we see it time and time again. Whenever we see adversity, we see human beings with magnificent behavior. And it's like this superpower that comes out of nowhere. And I was just bowled over, and I thought, I have got to show people how magnificent they are, because they don't realize when they're just, you know, on the hamster wheel going to work and everything, they don't realize all this untapped potential they have. And I wanted to be able to show people that. So it's easy looking back, it's much easier to be able to look at things in a linear way. It seemed to take forever. But I just lost the love for my company, ended up closing it without hurting anyone, just changing direction, rehoming all my staff, getting better and getting over my injuries and everything, and just learning more and more about behavior profiling. And it became my true purpose on this planet, Vicky.
And it's a powerful story that you've got. So when you said about it being part of that Boxing Day tsunami, I remember it. I remember having a friend out there at the time as well, on the other side of the island, so didn't get affected by it. But you just talked then about a reset button. So would you say that is what happened to you? Being part of that tsunami was like a reset button for your life?
Yeah, I think one of the things that happens in adversity is I believe that we are realigned with what's important to us. If you imagine, there I am sitting in Jimmy Lowell's garden at the top of the mountain, not able to do anything. And what am I thinking about? Am I thinking about my sales figures? Am I thinking about my staff? Am I worried, you know, as to whether we've got the right, we've hit targets? No. What I'm thinking about is spending more time with my nieces and nephews and playing Scrabble with my mum and dad, and those things that are precious to you. Suddenly you're reminded, what are you doing on this hamster wheel? The things that are important to you, you need to be aligned with, you need to remember that. So in that sense, yes, I think we're recalibrated to our core values in adversity. And we see it just recently, we see it in the pandemic, Vicky. I believe that the pandemic is I think the reason for the Great Resignation is because so many people during the pandemic thought, hold on a minute, what am I doing? This isn't what I want. It's not fulfilling me.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, isn't it, about being fulfilled in what we do. And I will come on to values in a bit. So when you decided to have that reset when you came back, what was it that made you stop being the CEO of your old business, doing what that was, and focusing on behaviors? What was it specifically about behaviors that made you go, this is me?
I don't think that it was my choice, Vicky. If you imagine, some people don't know when to lie down when they get hit. And I learned a very valuable lesson, and that's the fact that it's okay to lie down for the count of 9, as long as you're up by 10. That's all that matters. But I was one of these people that if I fell over, I bounced up. So I had a whole plethora of things that were telling me, you're on the wrong path, Michelle. Lie down, stop, recover. So I had slip discs. I had an internal infection, which stopped me ever being able to have a family. I had PTSD, adrenal exhaustion, fibromyalgia, the worst eczema you've ever seen on my hands or my feet, cancer, all sorts of things just hit me. And it was almost like every time I got back up, something else hit me. And I look back now and I think maybe that was maybe that was my angel. So will you listen? Just lie down for a little bit. So it was during when I was smashed on the floor into smithereens, it was putting myself back together that made it so important to understand what drives me, what fulfills me, who I am and why I'm like that. And that's what I wanted to give to the world. I wanted to take the experience I'd been through and make it useful for other people. So what I truly wanted to do is allow other people to understand themselves, how they tick, how they're motivated, without having to go through the kind of trauma that I had.
Mm, okay. And so what, I mean, you knew before the tsunami thing, you were talking about the fact that you worked with someone who already did behavioural profiling. What have you learned about yourself, and how has it impacted on your life, personally and professionally, by understanding Michelle?
Um, I think I like to think that I knew who I was anyway. But here's the thing, Vicky. For me, during or immediately after the tsunami, when I was sat there going, why those people, why is that person acting like that? Why is that person doing that? And I suddenly realized that although I thought I knew about profiling, I didn't. And for me, it was that realization that people are motivated by an unseen force. And what I mean by that is that we can see each other's behavior because we display it to others. So we can read other people's behavior very easily by reading the words they use, their gesticulations, their body language. We can pick up signals. But actually, when it comes to people's core values and what motivates them, that's something that we can't see. So unless you know these people intimately, it's very difficult to try and judge what motivates them. And that's the thing that made me sit there going, do you know what? I know nothing about behaviour profiling. And that bugged me. So I had to go back to school and just start from scratch and say, okay, let's pick this apart. And that's what drove me.
Mm. And I get that in terms of the whole values part and our core values. But I mean, you say that we can read people just by their gesticulations and the words they use and their body language. You and I can, and other people I've obviously been recording this with, because it's what we do, but not everybody does. Some people are blind to it. How can you help them just with really simple things? People who are listening thinking, I've no idea how to read somebody. Michelle, you're the people reader. How do I do that?
Well, I mean, that's exactly what I do, Vicky. I run, workshops and training courses on the superpowers of reading people, and that's exactly what I do. It's just full of cheat sheets, and I would be delighted if any one of your listeners wanted any of those cheat sheets. I would be very, very happy to share them. It's just a roadmap. If somebody is high dominant behavior or very, driven and all the rest of it, it stands to reason that their handshake is going to be firmer and more confident, that their body language is going to show it, that they dress in a certain way, and maybe a power suit or a shiny shoe or something. You can guarantee that if they're wearing jewelry, it's going to be the real thing, the real deal, and the latest gadgets. Whereas if you have someone that's the opposite, somebody that is maybe high green in in some terms, or high S in DISC terms, but that kind of nurturing and giving and supporting person, they're completely different in their demeanor and the way they dress and the words that they use. It's much more collaborative and much more inclusive. And they will dress differently because they dress more for comfort. And if they're wearing jewelry, it's more likely to be a charity bracelet or a piece of jewelry that's got their children's fingerprints on it or something meaningful. So once you understand, and this is a soft skill, so there is no scientific proof behind this, it's just evidence. But when the evidence piles up as high as Mount Everest, you've got to see the patterns. And if you look for the patterns, you will never go far wrong.
Oh, 100%. And like you say, just understanding people's body language is amazing. You can get people that just walk into that room, don't they? I had it in the PA show I was talking to last week, this one lady who'd come in slightly late. And I said, and here is a prime example of an outgoing person who has literally strolled straight in, sat in the front row and shown the body language. And it is. But I suppose the thing is like you say, you and me and other people who have been on this podcast, this is what we do day in, day out. Now, our personalities don't really change, do they? In terms of, outgoing, reserved, people focused, task focused. I suppose our strongest style doesn't really change, but you talked about core values, and that is really the thing I want to kind of focus in on now, because that is hard to read and that changes with life's experience. So tell me more about that.
Actually, I'm not going to, I don't want to disagree with you, but I'm going to turn it slightly by a few degrees. For me, people's behaviour, and I've worked with Dr. Leori Fern-Pollack, a brilliant doctor in this field, and we came up with an analogy, and that analogy is the fact that our behaviour is just the way that we use our brain. So if you imagine that we all have a bus that drives around the different areas of the brain and it stops at different organs at different times, if you want to change your behaviour, you have to change the route that the driver takes of that bus. So you can change your behavior. You have to practice until he doesn't need to read the map anymore, but you can change your behavior in that sense. I believe that people's core driving forces are actually more locked into their DNA, and I'll tell you why. All of the work I've done and all of the research I've done to create the profiles that I have go back to the fundamental years of that person. So when I show someone their essence, core driving force results, or whatever it is that we're doing along those lines, it usually connects to their caregivers and the way they were brought up, their experiences, their culture, religion, background, all the people that gave them advice, and that kind of almost shaped their DNA. For me, that is harder to change. You might sway those. So let's imagine, I mean, one of them is individualistic or influence. It's that need to want to do things for yourself. Now, that's not particularly high in me, but when I launched my book 10 years ago, it suddenly spiked. It went through the roof. And that's because all my effort was to try and get that to be a bestseller, a number one, all the rest of it. So all of my consciousness was put into do this for me, do this for my book. But as soon as I started getting those 5-star reviews on Amazon, it went back down again. So you can have spikes. And you can have things that change those drivers when you have children, when you get married or divorced, or when you change your job. Yes, they can change priorities, but in terms of the top and the bottom readings, they're your DNA.
Yeah. And you said, going back to what you said earlier, when you sat on the top of that hill, wondering why people were doing things after the tsunami had hit, you suddenly thought to yourself on the hamster wheel, why am I here? Your values really, you had the time, I guess, really, isn't it? And that's what I think people are missing. Do you not think? People are missing the
Absolutely
time.
agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. We're on this hamster wheel that tells us that we have to go to work, we have to do this, have to take the kids to football, and then we have to cook dinner, and all these kind of things. And being ADHD, I kind of fight against that anyway. But that's the problem. We don't spend enough time reflecting on what it is that we want in order to be fulfilled. So I spend my life, especially with young adults, trying to help them find the right route. Because they might be guided down a path. You've got to be a doctor or a dentist or whatever, and actually I can see they really want to be an actress, and I'm just like, please don't let someone waste 20 years of their life being miserable. Let them be fulfilled, because if we align ourselves to our true core drivers, that's what makes us really shine.
So how can someone start, if someone's listening to this thinking, but hold on a minute, Michelle, like you say, I've been, doing accountancy. Perhaps someone's an accountant thinking, but I've been doing it for 10 years and no, I'm not fulfilled, but I have absolutely no idea what I want to do. How do I start with even knowing that?
I think to sit down and write just maybe a mind map of all the things that make you happy. All right. So for me, it might be taking photos, or it might be playing with my kittens, or it might be being in service to others and giving them surprises that they're not, want, and painting and crafty things. Just make a list of all the things that you love doing and all the things that you have to do in your life as well. And one exercise that I like to use is imagine that you're in a large people carrier. Imagine you're in a large people carrier and you are sitting in the driving wheel, okay, by the steering wheel. You can have someone or something next to you. And then after that, you've got rows. And the rows behind you, let's imagine that you've got 6, 7, 8 rows. Doesn't matter. It's a huge, great big long car. But prioritize. What is the most important thing to you? What can you not live without? And have them directly behind you. And just go back and prioritize, so that the things at the back of that people carrier are the things that you think, actually, I can live without that. That's really not of importance to me. And just the idea of prioritizing what really makes me thick, that make me tick, make me thick,
Yeah.
Freudian slip there, what really makes me tick, what really drives my boat, that's a really good exercise. And then just start filling your buckets with the things that make you happy.
Mm. What brings you joy?
Absolutely.
And I'm always about that, live life in the happy lane. And I guess it was only when I got fired from my corporate role 10 and a half years ago that at the time I thought was really bad, but actually best thing that ever happened to me, because you get to do what you want to do. So would you say then, in terms of, obviously, I know you found your purpose, how has it been for your own personal life, not so much your business life? What does it mean for you and your family, Stuart, your husband, for you to be in flow?
That's a really good question, isn't it? Um, I guess for me, it was a much tougher journey than it might look. So a lot of people say, well, how do you living your life on purpose, bully for you? How did you do that? And actually, I went through some horrendous periods of time when I thought that the rug had just been pulled from underneath me. So if I go back to after the tsunami, I thought when we launched the Hikadu Village Fund and I was the PRO, and all I was doing was spending all my time raising money for orphans out in Sri Lanka. And I thought that was my role on this planet. And then 6 months later, after we'd raised £100,000 and the rest of the committee said, oh, we want to go back to our own lives now, we've done enough to repay. I was sat there thinking, first of all, how can you ever repay anyone for saving your life? And secondly, what are you playing at? I want to continue this, but I couldn't run the charity on my own. So it felt like the world, the rug had been pulled from underneath me and my whole world was put into turmoil again. So I spent this really awkward period of time trying to find out what it is that fulfilled me. So I know that this might sound corny, but actually delivering what I've created to other people, holding up a mirror, showing them how magnificent they are, that is the one thing that utterly fulfills me. As to how it's affected my family, my business, Stuart and I, what we've realised, he's my temperature gauge, because we are complete opposites, not only in our behaviour, but actually in our core drivers as well. And to a certain extent, that's my sanity check. I love the bones of that man. We've been together 30 years, and it's our wedding anniversary on the 10th of this month.
Oh,
Um,
congratulations.
Thank you very much. And he literally is my measuring stick. Whereas before we used to argue if it was like about money, which is a low driver for me, but a high driver for him. If we had an argument about money or something like that, it might get very tense. We might, we might clash. We might not see the funny side for quite a while. Whereas now we just look at it and we just go, that's your driver. And we joke about it. And so understanding that yin and yang has been fascinating. The same with my parents, being able to just leak a little bit of that stuff out to them without making it sound like I'm preaching at them or anything like that. It's just understanding those relationships and helping them work better. I can walk away. You used to clash with my dad all the time, but I can walk away now and just go, okay, I understand what behavior he's in at the moment and why he's doing that. And it just helps us to bridge that gap a little bit better, I think.
And I think that's one of the great things about understanding your own. And that's why this podcast is called It Starts With You, because we can't change other people. It's about knowing who you are and being able to read others. It's such a powerful, powerful skill to have. And like you say, it's a soft skill, but I empower other people to just know the impact it will have personally and professionally.
You
What's
do. You do it really well, Vicky, as well. And it's so important that people know that when they understand their own behavior, they can't turn around and say, well, this is me, deal with it. It's about having the tools and having the ability to be able to say, okay, I'm going to be the bigger person here. I have the tools. I understand what's going on. Let me flex. And I just think that if more people can learn this, then we can infect the world with happiness and harmony and just understand each other better. It's a more beautiful place.
Oh, that is a wonderful thing to say. So when we talk about roles and jobs, and you're, very much about giving and sharing and stuff like that, would you say in terms of profiling that certain profiles are suited to certain roles in this world?
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely.
Give us some
Um,
examples.
Well, the way that I describe it is the fact that actually, when we're drawn to a role, it's not. I'm not going to say that you have to be a high red or a dominant person or that kind of very forceful character in order to be a CEO. But if you think about what you're drawn to in a role, it fits with your behavior profile. If it doesn't fit with your behavior profile, you're not going to be drawn to it. So, the people that like to be supportive and nurturing and all the rest of it are not going to be the ones that volunteer to go out and take the leading role in the in the local panto and things like that, because they're not drawn to it. It doesn't resonate with their profile. So the most important thing, I think, when looking at roles is to understand where are you drawn and why might that be. That can tell you about your behavior. Now, I think back now, Vicky, before I understood about myself, when I first joined the Royal Air Force at 17 years old, and I applied to be a cartographer. I wanted to be a cartographer or a data analyst or something like that. I look back now and I think, thank heavens, I never got through, because I wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes. The fact that I lasted as long as I did in the Air Force is a flipping miracle anyway, because I'm the most maverick, naughty person you've ever met. But yeah, I look back and it just makes me giggle. So to be able to give young adults the insight into this is a joy for me. I love doing it. And that's why I work with companies like Employability UK and Country Building Society, who are doing this and putting me in front of young adults so I can give them those tools.
So what would you say on the other side to that? If you are listening to this and you are a manager or a CEO, for those people that are responsible for others, telling them what to do, telling them what jobs to do, giving them tasks and things to do, what would you say to them if they are just giving them out, not quite willy-nilly, but just saying, that's no, you've got to do this job?
Yeah, well, first of all, don't. I'm going back 20 years ago now when my marketing agency gained investors in people, one of the youngest companies in the country to gain investors in people. And the reason I did that was because I had a passion that leaders are there to create a working environment that people want to come to. It's their responsibility to make sure that their people are fulfilled. And I've been banging that drum for more than 20 years and I still do it. So I would say if you have the ability to be able to do behavior profiles and analyses that show you where people shine, align their energy to the role that you want them to do, pick them for their natural energy and their natural ability for that role, and don't force people into a role that they don't want to do, because if you do, you'll lose them and more fool you. Simple.
Mm. And that comes into the Gallup report, which I'm sure you've read, which talks about, I think it was the State of the Workplace 23. So the latest one after COVID, about the engaged, not engaged, actively disengaged, or quietly quitting and loudly quitting, and the fact that that's now it's going further and further away. And you talked about the Great Resignation on people. If people are still there thinking, I still don't know what I want to do, give them what top piece of advice, what top tip would you give them if they're listening to this thinking, I'm not fulfilled, I don't know how to be fulfilled, where do I start?
So, okay, I think there's a very important lesson here. When I do people's core driving force analysis, and I find that they're fulfilled for something that they are not doing at work and they don't have the ability. Let's imagine that someone, I'm not going to mention who it is, but someone is a prison officer in an extremely dangerous prison with dangerous people in it, and they happen to be very high green or very high S in DISC profile, so that nurturing, caring person, but they've got this role as a prison officer. And they're not fitting and they're not really, they're not fulfilled. Guess what? Your brain doesn't know whether you are clocking on or clocking off. So if you need to do your job and then you need to go and get fulfilled outside of work, you can top up your bucket outside of work and your brain doesn't know the difference. You're still getting the fulfillment. So even if you're doing a role that doesn't fit, then just make sure that all the things that fulfill you are fulfilling you outside. And the second thing, don't beat yourself up. It took me, well, every birthday I say, oh, it took me until I was 55 to realize who I really am. And every year I say that because we always learn more things about us. So it is a journey. Don't beat yourself up. If the job isn't fulfilling you, do little things to be able to keep you fulfilled. And keep looking, keep testing and looking, and find out where your energy really brings you alive.
I love that. I love that. I love the words that you use. And we talk, I mean, as you know, I'm a disc trained. I know you're disc trained as well, but you've created your own tools as well, haven't you, that work well together? Because to me, the personality is only the core of the onion, and it's all those other layers that we put on that build up our behaviors. So why did you create new tools if there's already so many out there?
Well, I think that's got a lot to do with my profile. So my core driving force is I have that individualistic streak, which means, why do it that way? Why don't we do it a different way? Whereas there are other people that are like, no, you've got to do it the way it's always been done. Actually, there is no right or wrong. And I use lots of different tools. So I started off, I love the work of William Walter Marsden. So I started off with DISC and I started off with Inscape, which then Wiley took over. And then I started looking at other profiles and different types. And I looked at insights and, lots of other tools. But it just annoyed me because I'm always right. I like to be right. And I actually saw when I was thinking, hold on a minute, they've asked me a question there that's going to elicit the wrong answer, and my profile's not going to come out correctly. And it got to a stage where I knew the profiles so well and could see the holes and could see where people are going, that bit's true, but that bit's not. And I could see where the mistakes were happening. So I thought, do you know what? Some of these profiles have actually been copied from other people because they've copied the mistake as well. So you can actually see some producers of profiles were actually repeating the mistakes because they weren't going back to the original work. So I just decided, you know what? If I could have dinner with anyone on this planet, alive or dead, I would love to sit down with William Moulton Marsden, and I would love to say to him, I've taken your original theory, I've understood what you meant, and I think that I've developed it even a little bit further. What do you think? And I hope to every inch of my body that he would say, I'm really proud of that.
Smashed it. Yeah. And I love, because your tools, you've got the behaviors, so personalities and the values that then align with each other. Because it's like you say, you can do personalities, but and that's at the core of everything I do. But you've got to put those other layers on to build up the person that we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got lots more analyses. I've got rapid rapport, which is an analysis that allows you to covertly read someone else for the sake of building rapport or repairing relationships. That's magnificent. I've also got illuminator, which actually starts to look at potential neurodiversity in the workplace. And I've looked, and I can't find anyone that's doing that. And I think that's massively important.
Yeah.
And I've got a navigation tool for children as well that helps them to navigate their relationships. So what I love doing more than anything is I love creating these analyses, and just if I could just create for the rest of my life and give these to people, then I would.
Oh, amazing. And that is probably a really great way to bring this conversation to an end with all of that deliciousness. I will say though, I'm going to ask you for all of your details so I can put them in the show notes. But if people want to get hold of you, Michelle, how can they do so?
There's only one Michelle Mills Porter on the planet. So
Thank God.
yeah, that's exactly what Stuart says, cheeky mare. Yeah, if you look me up on LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere, yeah, Michelle Mills Porter, just reach out. If you say that you've seen me on this podcast, then I'll send you some cheat sheets. I'll treat you even better than everyone else.
Differently to everyone else.
Yes, Mum.
Oh, Michelle, it's been great to talk to you. And yeah, if you've whatever has been affected by you in this podcast, please drop your comments, get in touch. Look forward to hearing from you. How has this conversation had an impact on you? What have you learnt? What will you do differently? Do leave a review on Apple or Spotify on It Starts With You podcast. And also leave a comment down below. Do also then connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And why not even join the Facebook group It Starts With You and keep the learning ongoing. Thank you for listening.